Welcome to the Todd L. Levitt Show. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night, whatever time you may be watching this show. I am attorney Todd L. Levitt, and we come to you right here from Time Warner Cable. If you've been joining us over the past couple weeks, we've had such guests as Chief William Dwyer, Framington Hills Police Chief, Judge Langford Morris, who's an Oakland County Circuit Court judge. We've had Dr. Sal Kogan. We've had Spencer Perry on, who's the chairperson of the Reform Party. And I am extremely excited about tonight's guest. And he's a good friend of mine. He's an attorney. He's a member of the Reform Party. He's a fellow Central Michigan University graduate, such as myself. I am so happy and pleased to have with him. Let me introduce to you Matt Abel. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Thanks for having me here tonight, Todd.
Let's get started right away. Did you have trouble finding the studio?
No, not at all.
Okay, because, you know, it's a very difficult place to find. And I want the audience to get to know a little bit about you. They're probably wondering what this show is all about. Well, let me explain to you what we're going to talk about tonight. As I mentioned before, Matt is a member of the Reform Party, and the Reform Party has made tremendous gains, not only across the country, but the state of Michigan. So we're going to ask Matt about all his views on everything from the environment to taxes to education to crime. But first, we're going to get to know a little bit about Matt himself. As I mentioned, you're an attorney, and why don't we talk about where you grew up? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, some kids are Army brats. I'm kind of an educational brat. My father was a college professor and university administrator. I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, lived there 7 years. I actually went to nursery school at the University of Nebraska.
And I understand that the University of Nebraska has a tremendous nursery school program.
And a great football team, go Cornhuskers.
I'm all for the school program.
After that, we moved to Eugene, Oregon. My father was a professor at the University of Oregon, and we lived there 5 years. And from there, we moved to Vermont. We were in Castleton, Vermont. There's a small state college in Castleton.
So are you in high school?
I went to high school.
You're going pretty quick, are you?
Right. I graduated high school in Vermont.
Okay, first you're at nursery school in Nebraska,
right,
and now you're in high school in Vermont.
Right.
What happened to your junior high years? Was it traumatic, or?
No, not really. Junior high was
like
split between Oregon and Vermont. Actually, I skipped second grade, and I skipped 8th grade, so I went through school fairly quickly.
And this whole time, your father was an educator. He was a professor, and did you say he was an administrator at this time also?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. He was the president of Castleton State College in Vermont, and then when we came to Michigan, he became president of Central Michigan University.
As a matter of fact, when I was at Central back in the 80s, he was the president.
Right, and
he did a fine job.
He probably signed your degree.
I think he did.
So he was at Central for 10 years, from 75 to 85.
Did you live in Mount Pleasant, or were you already in college at this time?
No, I went to college in Vermont for 2 years. I obtained a associate degree in criminal justice from Castleton State College, and when we moved to Michigan, I went to U of M. I transferred in as a junior. I was 17 years old, and I was taking upper-level philosophy classes. It was over my head, so I withdrew from Big Blue, and I went up north to Central Michigan.
And what did you study in undergrad?
I have a philosophy degree. My major is...
So you did actually get a philosophy degree.
Right. I have an associate in criminal justice and then a bachelor's in philosophy.
Okay.
After I finished my bachelor's degree at Central Michigan, I continued on and took a master's degree in public administration.
Wow.
I've always been interested in government.
But you look like such a young guy.
Thank you.
How is that at all possible?
Yes.
I don't understand that.
And then after completing my master's degree, I was still naive politically, although somewhat experienced, and I knew that David Stockman had resigned his southwestern Michigan congressional seat to go and be director of the Office of Management and Budget under Ronald Reagan.
Is this before law school?
Right, before law school.
You're out of college, you're working on your master's program.
I finished my master's.
You're done.
And at the end of my master's, I went and volunteered and worked for the Democratic candidate in one of the most Republican areas in the country.
And what's that?
It was southwestern Michigan. I was living in
Oakland County?
Well, no, it's close.
Because I thought Framington Hills was the most,
it's pretty much also. I was living in Niles, Michigan at the candidate's house. He was an iron worker. They'd wake me up every morning with a cup of coffee. I was sleeping on their couch. It was the most fun I've had.
Interesting.
And the Democratic Party was actually experimenting with some new get-out-the-vote targeting systems, and that's why they were interested in that race. I had no idea that they had no expectations of winning it. I thought we were in there to go and try to win this race, but that was not to be.
Right.
On the day
but the whole time where you think, I mean, let me just interrupt you and ask you, this time had you already considered going to law school?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so it was already on your mind that after this congressional race, depending upon the outcome, you're on your way to law school.
Right. Well, actually, this was a couple of month vacation for me, really. After finishing my master's degree in December, I worked, I think the election was probably in April. And when the day after the election, I was actually at a chiropractor's office who had...
Dr. Saul Kogan?
No, it was
former guest of mine, is a very good friend of the show.
I probably have to go see him
soon. Yeah, they'll give you a good adjustment.
Good, I could use that.
He adjusts the whole crew here.
The day after the election, I received a call from Senator Levin's office, from Carl Levin's office, that they were interested in interviewing me for a position. So I got in my Chevy Vega and I drove to Detroit, and I had an interview, and I was hired in Senator Levin's office in Detroit to work in the as a community development specialist. My areas of concentration were education and senior citizens.
So already we see, as a young man, you know, you were surrounded by your father, who's an educator. You traveled to a number of colleges, so you have a great insight already on education and what are the downfalls or the pitfalls and what are the negatives and positives. So that's terrific. And now you're telling us that you went to work for Senator Levin.
Right.
So now you're involved in government, which you're probably learning just about everything from finance to, like you mentioned, community development. So what takes place next?
Well, actually, that wasn't my first job in government. I'd also worked for the Census Bureau in 1980. I worked for the census, and I worked for...
Did you count me? Because I think they missed me in 1980.
Well, probably counted you twice,
Did you?
Todd.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right.
I also worked for the city manager's office in Midland. I did an internship there.
Very conservative district.
Yes,
Am I right about that?
Midland is...
Forget about it.
Right.
You'll never catch me living there.
And when I was in Vermont, also working on my criminal justice degree, I worked for a state's attorney there, the county prosecutor in Rutland County.
Wow.
So I've been on the prosecution side and the defense side, which still got me bumped off a jury when I was...
Is that right? Now, how did you get to law school?
When I was in Senator Levin's office working, I had planned to go to law school. I applied to Wayne State, and I was admitted. I had planned to both work and go to school at night, but well, I did that, but not in Senator Levin's office. There was, we had some political differences, and I ended up leaving the office. Not me and the senator, but me and some of the staff.
Okay, so you went right to law school, Wayne State University, daytime?
I went in the evening program.
Well, you said that, but I wondered if after
summer,
that you went back to daytime.
I went through in 3.5 years.
Is that right?
I sold business telephone equipment. I got into a lot of lawyers' offices through my business telephone sales because I decided to concentrate on lawyers because I knew something about it.
You didn't sell those solar panels, did you?
No, I didn't. I sold
because a guy came to my door and he looks just like you. So
no, I've never been
that wasn't you, was it?
I've never been a door-to-door salesman.
Right. I mean, not there's anything wrong with solar panels.
But no,
I just don't
fact,
think
that's
some people in my neighborhood still have those solar panel windows. Sorry, so you're in law school, and where are you working while you're in law school? Because you left Senator Levin's office.
Well, I sold telephones for a year or two,
but
including
to
the Detroit Bar Association. I sold them a phone system when they moved into the Penobscot building.
Did you clerk?
Moved again. Yes, I clerked for a wild attorney named David Jutkowitz. I probably shouldn't even mention his name.
Well, there it goes.
I don't know where he is anymore, but... yeah, that was quite an experience.
Well, look what a man you've turned out to be. So whoever he was, maybe he helped in shaping you.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Everything that in everyone's background shapes you.
So you graduated from law school.
Graduated from law school.
And are you still politically active at this time?
Yes, I was
You've always kept your pulse on politics.
In 1986, I ran for state representative as a Democrat in Livonia.
Isn't that not a conservative area?
Well, I lost that race.
Did you really?
Okay. I got
because
about,
Eric wasn't helping you.
Right. I think I got about 27% of the vote in that election.
That's not bad.
Well, no, and considering...
a name like Abel and Livonia?
I really didn't raise or spend much money.
Okay.
So...
All right, so now take us. You're out of law school, and you're working. You go to work for an attorney.
Right.
And you run for office.
Well, my first job out of law school was working for Bill Salinas, who is now the district judge in Romulus.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He had a small practice on Michigan Avenue in Wayne, and I worked there for a year, maybe two, I'm not sure, doing general practice, writing wills and doing divorces and custody and all that domestic stuff.
Did you get married in the meantime?
I got married right out of law school and
we missed that
divorced and with no kids from that marriage, and then I've remarried 7 years ago. I adopted my son Gabriel, who is now 11.
Wow.
And our son Julian is 4.
Did you adopt him?
And no, he's
concede.
Right.
Okay.
And so we have 2 boys and 2 dogs.
In fact,
and,
if you
my
were,
wife Lorraine and I.
I'd like to call you Dad personally. So now you have 3 sons. Although I think you're too young to be my father.
Gee, I sure hope so.
Yeah. So, all right.
No offense.
I don't know where we're going with this, but
I'm 41 years old.
Are you really?
I've been practicing law for 13 years now.
You look terrific.
And my second job was working for Jerry Raymond, who had been a city councilman in Livonia. In fact, his prior associate was Bob Ficano, so I figured maybe I was going to be the next Wayne County Sheriff, but that wasn't
wow.
me.
Okay, let me
just kidding.
That's all right. And what kind of law do you practice today?
Today, I mostly concentrate on criminal defense.
Because I see you in court all the time.
Mostly criminal
defense. Which means we're both busy.
Yes,
that's a good sign.
True. Yeah. Although usually we're waiting when we're in court.
You know, becoming a lawyer is you go to law school, you study day and night, then you become a lawyer, and you sit around and you wait. You wait, and the judges tell you to get there at 8:30, and they don't. And some of them, not in this district in Framington or Novi, but some of them in other cities don't take the bench till 10:30. Will you acknowledge that?
That's been known to happen.
That is
frequently.
out of control.
Well, I had 2 cases this morning.
You should
Neither
run for
went.
judge.
Well,
have you ever considered that, Judge Abel?
Well, I ran for justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, but apparently the voters of Michigan didn't see in their wisdom.
All right, let's get right to that. Now that you mention it, you did run recently for Supreme Court of Michigan.
That's right. That was 1 year ago.
Now, for our listeners out there who don't know,
actually, just 1 year ago.
Is that a
November.
nonpartisan election?
Well, Michigan has one of the screwiest systems in the country, if I can describe it that way. The political parties nominate the candidates, and then they run on a nonpartisan basis. So the voter, unless they're informed aside from the ballot, will not know, just from looking at the ballot, which candidates have been nominated by the Democrats, which by the Republicans, and which by the Reform Party or any other party.
During this election, the Supreme Court election, which took place in what year?
It was 1998.
Okay. Who did you run against?
Well, I ran...
How many openings were there? Well, first let me back up.
There were 2
way
separate races.
How many members sit on the U.S. Supreme Court? How many?
There are 9 on the U.S. Supreme Court.
How many people sit on the Michigan Supreme Court?
I know,
but I don't know if you know.
The answer is 7.
7.
Right.
And do they get there by election or appointment?
Well, they're supposed to be elected, but if there is a vacancy, as the most recent vacancy was created when Conrad Mallett resigned and Robert Young was appointed, so some of them do get there by appointment, but there is an elective process in Michigan.
Okay. And you ran for one of those openings?
Right. Actually, there were 2 separate races. One had 2 seats, which was Justice Kavanaugh, was running for re-election, and he was re-elected. And the other seat was Patricia Boyle's seat that she decided not to run for re-election, so there was an open seat. There was another race for a partial term involving Clifford Taylor, and I said some things about Clifford Taylor in the campaign that I will never take back, and that probably could get me hauled in front of a grievance commission, considering what they're doing to other lawyers who use their First Amendment rights to speak out.
The Michigan Supreme Court is out of control. I'll go on the record and say that right now as an attorney.
Well, out of control is an understatement,
out of control.
I think.
That's all I want to say. But in all fairness to Clifford Taylor, he's not here to defend himself, so maybe we won't restate what you said about him.
Well, I think perhaps you should invite Justice Taylor to come on your show and maybe explain how it might not be a conflict of interest that he sits on the Supreme Court and his wife is the governor's legal advisor.
That's been very well publicized.
Right. Any case in which the state of Michigan is a party...
Major conflict.
Exactly.
Look, I'm a criminal attorney, but you do not have to be an attorney to understand the conflict there. I mean, if the state of Michigan has a lawsuit and the case goes to the Supreme Court, major conflict.
I think we know
Isn't that obvious?
I think we know which way Justice Taylor
now,
would come down.
Is he known as a Republican or a Democrat?
A Republican.
Okay. Who are known as Democrats on the current Michigan Supreme Court?
Well, Justice Kavanaugh, Michael Kavanaugh, was nominated by the Democrats.
Okay, and, Blanchard?
Well, Blanchard was not
appointed, right? I mean, years ago.
Blanchard was not on the court. He was
no, but he was governor.
I'm not sure how
years ago. I'm just
how
asking
Michael
how
Kavanaugh originally got on
the
court. I think he.
Well, I know he's not governor now. I mean, you know, come on.
Are you
kidding me?
Let's see. I'm drawing.
Okay, we're talking about who's Democrats on the Supreme Court in Michigan. All right, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this about, as far as when you ran for Michigan Supreme Court. You ran under the Reform Party.
Escapes me.
You ran under the Reform Party, correct?
Right.
And as I understand it, and we've had Spencer
Abraham.
Spencer.
Oh, Perry Spencer.
Perry Spencer on the show. And I understand that the Reform Party does not believe in taking money from political action committees.
That's right.
Correct?
It's in our platform.
Right. And so when you ran, what was the comparison between how much the other parties raised and spent compared to what you spent?
Well, I think there's a graphic on that that's been prepared.
Absolutely.
And it shows Justice Corrigan, now Justice Corrigan, who was then Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, spent over $1 million, $1,004,000.
Okay.
Clifford Taylor, who was in the other race, spent close to $1 million, $943,000.
And it shows there you spent nothing.
Right. I raised zero and I spent zero. And realistically, I didn't expect that I would win, but I was trying to make a point, which is that if you don't raise $1 million, it's really pretty tough to win.
Right, exactly.
And what really motivated me to run is that as a criminal defense attorney, I have been solicited for political contributions by sitting judges. They send invitations.
We always get solicited. And they make, and it's like you feel guilty if you don't contribute and you don't attend their parties.
Well, I don't feel guilty.
I don't, but some of them make you feel guilty.
Yes, and not only will they
and it's a perception out there, and I think the public needs to know this, that there is a perception out there within the legal community that if a judge is running for office, and number one, you don't give a campaign contribution or you don't attend one of the parties, that it's going to come back and hurt you when you have a client and you go before that judge. I think that's wrong.
Right.
And I'm not saying every judge feels that way, and I'm not saying that any judges in this city, since I live and work in this city, feel that way, because we got two great judges, Judge Harris, Judge Parker, great people, and the 52-1 District Court in Novi, which also this covers, great judges out there, McKenzie, Powers, and Batchick, and Balgarelli recently retired. I really think very highly of all those judges, but they do make you feel guilty. Not these ones, but there's a lot out there that do.
Well, they send the invitations to the fundraisers. They just stack up nice engraved invitations, and normally they're asking for $100 contributions. Anyone can contribute up to $3,400 to a judicial campaign in Michigan, but judges are only allowed to solicit a maximum of $100 from lawyers. So they put a disclaimer at the bottom that says if you've already contributed $100 or been solicited for $100, please consider this merely an informational piece, not a solicitation. As I said in the Representative Assembly meeting last week, where I'm elected representing Wayne County. No, this is as a lawyer representing Wayne County, where they were considering raising that limit to $300.
Well,
whether they put a disclaimer on there or not, it's still a solicitation. I don't think you.
Well, who gave all this money? Who gave $1 million and then close to over $900,000 to those two candidates who ran for Supreme Court against you? Where'd that money come from?
And Todd, that doesn't count all the soft money.
Oh, right. That's just what is reported.
There was probably at least as much soft money.
And if they don't spend all that money, just like in other races, do they get to keep the difference?
Well, they can keep it in a campaign fund
until they're done with office.
Well, they can't take it when they leave, but
what office can you take the money when you leave if there's any in that fund? Isn't it? I've heard that over the last couple of years that, let's say the president or someone in Congress has a lump sum of money that they've collected, that they can keep that when they leave. Is that right?
I'm not an expert on that particular area, although I do know a fair amount about election law.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. It's just, you just hear about these things. So what was who won that Supreme Court race, as we know?
Well, Justice Kavanaugh was reelected, and now Justice Maura Corrigan.
Okay, and Clifford Taylor.
And Clifford Taylor, correct.
Okay.
And if you look at their campaign contributions and then you look at their rulings, it's interesting that their rulings closely correlate to the same types of groups who were giving them contributions. The Chamber of Commerce and all of their tentacles, if you will, are really some of the main contributors to the Republican Party.
There's a huge...
And it's interesting, the Supreme Court, in the first 31 cases that this new court had ruled on, 30 times they ruled for either the insurance company or the big business and against the injured party or the plaintiff.
Okay, why don't you tell our viewers, there's a real big controversy going on right now with, one, the Michigan Supreme Court, two, the State Bar, and us lawyers in general. I mean, do you feel comfortable telling everybody about that?
Sure.
I want you to explain
more
what's
than happy.
taking place, because I think the public needs to know this, because this does affect them.
Well, I'm not sure which aspect of it you'd like to address.
The Ford issue. What happened to this lawyer?
There's an attorney, James Ford, who I believe is from Kalamazoo, who had a case that went to the Supreme Court and lost. He had an injured child, I believe, in an automobile accident, and it was a case involving the no-fault law. I can't give you the details, but it seemed that the legislative intent was clear that this type of a claim should have been paid. In spite of that...
So the legislatures, when they wrote the law, their intent was that when someone has this type of injury, that they should receive some kind of damages.
Correct.
And is that how the case turned out?
Well, no. The Supreme Court ruled against the injured plaintiff and said they were out of luck. And so Mr. Ford spoke out and complained about the court. I can't quote him exactly, but he did say that until widows and orphans give as much money in campaign contributions to the court as the insurance companies and the Chamber of Commerce, that we're unlikely to see anything different coming out of this court. The court has been so politicized that it's really hurting the reputation of Michigan nationally, I believe.
So then what took place next was, I believe, is that somebody grieved this attorney Ford. Some grievance, as an attorney, we are held to a very high standard of care, and if somebody out there has an issue with us, they can file a grievance with the Attorney Grievance Commission, to which we have to answer in writing within a certain amount of time. Now, I believe in this case that Matt just mentioned, an attorney who leads the Republican Party.
He is the attorney for the Republican.
Oh, he's the attorney for the Republican Party.
That's correct.
He filed a grievance against Mr. Ford.
That's right. And personally, I think that Mr. Doster, Eric Doster, the attorney who filed the grievance, is the one who is being unethical here. He clearly should understand, and if he doesn't, they should pull his law license. He should understand that Mr. Ford has First Amendment rights and can say anything he damn well pleases
about the Supreme Court. So what happened now is...
Unless he knows that it's false.
Exactly. Now, the State Bar of Michigan, which is supposed to support us attorneys, I believe has refused to come out and defend Mr. Ford.
Well, the grievance, I understand, was dismissed just this past week.
Oh, well, it better darn well be dismissed, because we have constitutional rights to speak out against anything and everything we want to. That's what I believe.
Todd, if you give me just 1 minute, I'd like to
tell
why I ran for the Supreme Court,
because
I think the viewers should know.
We were going to get to that, by the way.
And as a criminal defense attorney, especially in Wayne and Oakland counties in the urban areas, much of the work goes to court-appointed lawyers. And some of the court-appointed lawyers in Wayne and Oakland County are making upwards of $100,000. And I began, after I stopped going to the fundraisers, I began to get less and less work. And I didn't think that was right. It's hard to stay in business without keeping sharp and staying in court all the time. So I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for the payroll records for the attorneys in Wayne County and in Oakland County. I then went and I got campaign contribution data from the county clerk's office.
Wow.
And it's interesting that the people who are making the most on the court-appointed attorneys list are also the greatest campaign contributors.
Oh, it's well known.
Judges. And some people say, well, the lawyers are just doing that because they appreciate the judges and that they're getting this work. But which came first, the chicken or the egg? Either way, there's clearly an appearance of impropriety. I believe there's actual impropriety going on. I released that information to the Oakland Press and to the Detroit Free Press back before the strike, and they wrote some articles about it, and Oakland County has changed their system.
Those huge stories that I read about, and I won't mention anybody's names who were in those stories, even though I knew every single one of them. You're the one that got that rolling?
Well, I can't take full credit for that, but I kind of, maybe I was the final straw that broke the camel's back.
And that changed everything in Oakland County.
Well, I'm not satisfied completely, but it has made a start now where I used to never get a case from Oakland County. I think before the assignment system changed, I received one case in a year. Now I receive a case about every 3 weeks, which is pretty good. I could certainly handle more work, but I think that's a good spread that there's enough work to do, and it gives you enough time to do the work.
And this all led to you running for the Supreme Court.
Well, I felt that that system was unfair, not only unfair to me as an attorney and my ability to earn an income, but incredibly unfair to the defendant, especially in the system that Oakland County had at the time. The judge who heard the case appointed the lawyer. So if I'm your lawyer and you're charged with murder, and I'm representing you in front of Judge X in Oakland County, you have the satisfaction of knowing that I was appointed by the judge. Now, am I working for you or am I working for the judge?
You know,
I think there's a serious
Let me just jump here and say,
there.
when I first became an attorney, I went on my own, and I survived on court appointments, and I'll be the first to agree that you want to please the judge, and you want to move the docket, you want to move the case along so you get more appointments.
Well, right.
It's counterproductive to your client. Even though you're supposed to represent the interests of your client, in the back of your head, you've also got the interests of the court and the judge in mind, because that's who's putting money in your pocket.
It has what we lawyers call a chilling effect on
very
your
chilling
ability to
effect. Oh,
zealously
boy.
represent your
You
client.
better believe it.
Even though,
But there are a lot of great court-appointed lawyers out there.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have a
there
lot of
certainly
friends
are.
of mine. I mean, I can name off 24 of them.
I just like to save them a lot of money in campaign contributions. And the other thing
And I
is,
appreciate that.
well, the other thing is that even judges who are lousy judges, and there must be some lousy judges because they're not all excellent, no matter what, they're still able to raise tons of money in campaign contributions.
I'm sorry, what'd you say? They're what?
Abel?
All right, hey now.
Yes.
Matt Abel, our guest.
Right.
Sorry,
Thank you.
you know.
But
It's a family show.
even
It's a very lighthearted show. For God's sakes, we got children working the cameras over here.
that's right. And
Young adults, one young adult.
I think the crew here is doing a great job.
What a great
by the way.
crew.
Thank you
Yeah,
all for
see, the
coming out.
audience doesn't get to see who's actually working the cameras.
Well, you might have to do a show with the crew one day.
You know what? I think in the next couple of weeks, the crew's on stage. All right, so back to why you ran for Supreme
just to wrap
Court.
up this kind of a
No, it's
story.
okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
I drafted
We've got time.
I'm elected on the Representative Assembly of the State Bar of Michigan. There are lawyers from each circuit court
Sure.
that are elected. There are approximately 150 members of the body, and I'm in my third term now in the Representative Assembly, and I read the rules, and I drafted an individual proposal, which apparently had rarely been done before, and put it out there to ask the Supreme Court to just issue an order. They could do it with a stroke of the pen and just require all counties and circuits to have a court appointment system that was based on objective criteria, and that once that was set up, that the cases be assigned on a rotational basis.
Isn't Oakland County now doing that, though?
Well, Oakland County is doing that. They have 5 levels in Oakland County based on the maximum penalty for the severity of the offense.
Because some attorneys...
They're only rotating the bottom 2 levels.
Okay, but in all fairness to the system in Oakland County, there are some attorneys out there who just don't do murder cases. Okay, so those attorneys, you can't have someone...
Actually, I misspoke. They're rotating more than the bottom 2 levels.
But you understand
they're
what I'm
not
getting at?
rotating
What I'm
the
trying to
murder
explain to
cases.
the audience is that if a judge has a murder case that comes before him or her, they can't just appoint any attorney. That attorney has to be qualified.
Now, it used to be. Before we fought them and got them to set up the system, they could appoint any attorney.
But now you got to be qualified.
Right, and there's a
Exactly.
point system, and I believe if you can qualify lawyers for lower level cases, there's no reason why you can't qualify them for higher level cases.
Absolutely.
The judges always argue that some of these cases are so intricate and involved that they really need to hand-pick specialized attorney. My point is, why don't we get a group, say these 10, 20, 30 lawyers are specialized lawyers, and they can handle any cases and rotate the high publicity cases, if you will, among them.
By the way, that verdict in that young man's
Nathaniel
case,
Abraham was convicted of
second-degree murder.
Second-degree murder.
Yeah, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I wasn't sitting on the jury, and I didn't hear all the evidence.
That is a great answer. I'll reframe my opinion from that also as a citizen and as a defense attorney.
It's our hope that justice was done.
Yeah, we hope that justice was done.
I understand Jeff Feiger said he's going to appeal.
Is that right? That doesn't surprise. I like Jeff. Let me just say that. But when we come back, we're going to take a short break here, and we'll talk more with Matthew Abel, who recently ran for the Michigan Supreme Court. He's a fine attorney, he's a good friend, and he's a member of the Reform Party. And we're going to talk to him about running for future office and what he stands for and what the Reform Party stands for when we come right back.
Take it from the Arbor Day Foundation. Rainforests are special. They're beautiful, wonderful, and if you look closely, you'll even say they're magical. Remarkable plants grow here, and the magic is that some can cure diseases. Half of our planet's plants and animals make their home in the rainforest, and some of the birds that nest here fly every summer to our own neighborhoods. But as beautiful, as wonderful, as magical, as important as the rainforests are, they're being burned and bulldozed, battered and abused by people who just don't know what they're destroying. What's left is a barren, sick land. We can help save the rainforest through the National Arbor Day Foundation's Rainforest Rescue. We can stop the fires and save the land. Support Rainforest Rescue. Write the Arbor Day Foundation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
Their whole lives are ahead of them, and Navy volunteers are beside them, tutoring, encouraging, and inspiring children in thousands of classrooms across the country. Because given the importance of education, shouldn't we pledge our allegiance to America's students?
For all.
Well, welcome back to the Todd L. Levitt Show. If you're just joining us or you've been joining us over the last half hour, we're joined today by a good friend of mine. His name is Matthew Abel. He's an attorney. He's very actively involved in politics. He's a member of the Reform Party. He's a great guy. He's been a great guest, and we're going to continue to talk to him over the next half hour about some of his views on the Reform Party and what he stands for and what his future holds for him. So, Matt, once again, I'm so happy to have you here as a fellow Chippewa graduate.
Fire up.
Let's talk about how you first got involved with the Reform Party.
Well, I used to be a Democrat. I told you I worked for Carl Levin, and you know, I was with the Democrats for quite a while, and I'm closer to the Democrats than the Republicans. I guess, you know, the Reform Party has liberals and conservatives. We're socially all over the
Sure.
map. I'm on the more liberal side of that. But I feel that the Democrats have really lost touch with, both of the parties have just lost touch with average people. Less than half the people vote. So what about the other half of the people?
They don't care about the people.
Who we want to talk to.
We're too busy bickering.
Well, absolutely. And in Michigan, the Democratic Party is controlled by the UAW and the unions. And while my wife is a UAW member, and God love her and the union, I really don't have anything against what they're doing, but I think politically they've made some huge mistakes. They're the 800-pound, proverbial 800-pound gorilla, if you will, of Michigan politics. They do whatever they want. They call the shots. Feiger was able to change that, but there were so many bridges burned in the process that that ended up not being productive. I think it would be better if they would back off a little bit and let democracy run itself rather than all the political interest groups, the political you know, the committees and all of that.
So you felt at first that the Democrats and Republicans were not representing the people who elected them and put them in office.
Well, I was really impressed by Ross Perot. Think of what you will of Mr. Perot, but the guy's right. I mean, he may be crazy, but that doesn't change the fact that he's absolutely right about the economics. And the economics is that the debt has gone up every year. They're talking about a surplus. What there is an expected surplus. The surplus is just less of a deficit. It's really not a surplus at all. It's garbage. It's a fiction, and they're passing the budget bills now, and you see they're spending more, and the national debt is going up. That national debt, the interest on the debt, and the strain on the economy is draining all of us.
So is it an issue with the Reform Party to control, is it a big issue in the Reform Party to control that national debt?
Absolutely. We should pay off the debt. We need a plan to pay off the debt. Well, we need to decrease government spending in some areas. Specifically, we need to end corporate welfare, if you will. There are all kinds of giveaways to large corporations, tax breaks, things that really are not necessary but are going on because of the political contributions that the big corporations are making. That's why they're making them.
Sure.
And they're getting what they want, which is economic benefits from it. If we would just close those loopholes, we would be on a much better course.
So and it would be on a national level, the Reform Party does not accept campaign contributions as we discussed earlier.
Not from political action
Not
committees.
from political action
we
committees.
Accept individual
Right, let me just
campaign
restate that.
contributions.
And what are some of the positions of the National Reform Party as a nationwide party, not as, you know, on the state level right now, but as a whole? But the state does pretty much is a microcosm of the whole anyhow.
Right. Well,
right?
We're aligned with the national goals.
And what are some of those policies?
Well, there are the economic policies, which are to start making inroads to pay off the national debt.
As you just mentioned.
Right. And to have more ethics in government, which doesn't mean getting into representative sex lives. What it means is cutting the cord between the lobbyists and the legislators.
Let me just interrupt you and ask you, how do you feel about what they did to Clinton? What do you
think? I think they impeached President Clinton for the wrong thing. They should have impeached him for the illegal foreign campaign contributions from China, but the reason that they didn't do that is because the Republicans are doing very similar things themselves. Maybe not from China, but they're violating the election laws just as much as the Democrats
and so they felt that by coming out with that, it would open up a can of worms to everybody else.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so back to the Reform Party, they're very, very, you know...
Well, and trade is a big issue with the Reform Party, in that we talk about fair trade, not free trade. And the problem with free trade and the World Trade Organization that's come up as of late is that the World Trade Organization rules take precedence over American law. And so what it does is it's gutting a lot of the environmental laws in this country, it's gutting a lot of the labor laws in this country, and you know, I'm all for world trade, but we really need to do it on a fair basis.
I've been very actively involved in trade lately with James, our cameraman. We've been trading Pokemon cards. Isn't that right, James? And I think he owes me 2 cards. So
well, that's good.
I know all about trade. I'm very actively involved in trade.
And they may well be Pokemon cards
from
made
Japan.
Okay.
That's right.
I'm sure. And
what about education?
And just one last thing on trade, which is, if we're going to make China, give China most favored nation status, what's the point in having any designation at all? Why don't we just throw all those laws out and have it free for all? That's
here's
what
my
they're
problem with
basically
trade.
saying.
My problem with trade is we allow all these other countries to bring in as many products into this country as they want to, and then when we try to take our products and put them into their country, they put all these barriers and these barriers and tariffs. And it's so wrong.
Right.
How about with China right now? How's the trade balance between us and China?
Well, it's not balanced at all. I can't give you the number, but we import a lot more from China than they import from us.
Okay.
And
so is that wrong?
Well, I don't think that's good for our economy.
Sure.
And I don't think it's good for the people working in China who are laboring in slave conditions. And it's really not good for American workers either, because our wages get depressed because of it.
But let's talk about, how you feel on some of these specific issues. What are your views on education, for instance?
Well, someone asked me this morning to sign
up. Can I go there?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, education. You can go anywhere you want. I mean, I'm happy to talk about. No, I don't actually.
I'll take some from James.
Someone asked me to sign a petition for a voucher for private schools this morning, and my response was absolutely not. I believe in the public school system. I went through the public school system.
As did I.
And my father was an educator. My mother was a teacher as well. She has a master's degree in education. I think if we allow people to take public money to the private schools, we're going to ruin the public school system.
I think it's wrong. I'll go on the record right now, and I'll say that's wrong.
No, I think if you were to say, here's a voucher, you can use it in any public school you want, I don't have a problem with that. I think that would be good. It would create some healthy competition.
Why would I want to give money to a private school when they may not even let my kid in that school to begin with? What if they put up barriers for some of us to get in, such as religious barriers or, academic barriers? But yet, wait, my taxes are going towards that. I mean, am I on point or am I a little off?
Well, I agree with you. You're not going to find any argument from me.
Because you are my guest. I would hope you would agree with me.
Well,
I'm just teasing. No, so I want to hear
I'd hope you'd agree with me, Todd.
I agree with you. You're my friend. I don't care what your views are. I'm on your side.
Well, I don't want people to say that. I want people to agree with me because I'm right.
But why don't you tell
And if I'm not right, I'm willing to be educated. People do change their positions over time, and some of my positions have changed.
Well, and that's what I want to know. I want to know more about your positions. What are your positions on different areas?
Well, if I can go off and be a real lefty here
Go
for
right
a little
ahead.
bit.
I'll get out of the way.
I don't think Al Gore is that far off about the internal combustion engine. We really need to move away from the internal combustion engine. It's doing terrible things and polluting the environment. It's depleting the mineral resources of the country and of the world. There's only so many years left of fossil fuels. Estimates range from maybe 25 years to 250 years, but regardless, somewhere down the road, we're going to run out of fossil fuels, and besides, they're polluting the environment. I think that if I was in Congress, I would introduce legislation to say that you can no longer sell a new automobile with an internal combustion engine that burns petrochemicals by the end of 2010.
What's Abraham's stance on this? Do you know?
Well,
is that well known?
His environmental record, both Senator Abraham and Congressman Nolenberg have some of the worst environmental records in the United States Senate. As much as in the Senate and the House, excuse me.
Okay.
As much as Spencer Abraham got up and talked about all that brownfield funding during the campaign last time, and trying to get the bond issue passed, actually, for brownfield funding, and making out to be a big environmentalist. I think all that was a big corporate giveaway. They're just taking that money, the earmarks for environmental purposes, using it to go to large corporations who are willing to take on cleaning up some areas.
What's Nolenberg's record on the environment?
He has his rating, depending on what environmental group you look at. Well, the Sierra Club, he's...
And I'm not picking on Nolenberg. I'm just asking.
I think he's right around 5% positive with the Sierra Club.
Is that right?
He's one of the worst on environment. I looked at earlier. I looked at.
We did have some charts, didn't we?
Yeah, I think there may be.
I don't know if they're going to put those charts up,
but of the 15 or so votes that the Sierra Club tracked on their website last time, he had voted the wrong way on all but one of them.
What's your stance on the environment?
And that was probably a mistake anyway.
I love trees and leaves and birds and berries. But let's look at the chart right now and see what we got here.
This is showing the campaign finance expenditures in the last Senate race, which was, well, not the last one, but when Spencer Abraham was elected the first time against Bob Carr, who lost the race. Spencer Abraham spent $4.5 million, and Bob Carr spent $3 million.
Well, how do we go from talking about the environment to, I guess we just jumped into campaign finance all of a sudden?
Well,
that's a great producer in there.
I guess so.
So let's just go right. So now, before we go back to the environment, we're talking about finance.
Well, they're related in that this is how we're wrecking the environment. Because
are you saying that these campaign finance figures come from certain corporations that are anti-environment?
Absolutely.
Is that what you're getting at?
Absolutely, right there. Total oil producer PAC campaign contributions, 1987 to 98, $48,000. That's just to Spencer Abraham alone.
Okay, and then we see at the bottom.
Consumer credit interest, they just passed a big banking bill.
Sure.
$38,000 there.
Now let me just say this. I mean, I invite both, Spencer Abraham or anyone from, Nolenberg's campaign or group or anyone that wants to come on my show and, talk about their stance on these issues and their views. Let me just say that for the record.
I'd like to see you
I welcome
interview them about their environmental
They're more than
records.
welcome, whoever's viewing this, if you're connected to any of these, campaigns or congressmen, just contact me. I'll be happy to put them on my show.
And give them equal time.
Yeah, I will absolutely give them equal time. Because I'm an objective kind of guy, Matt.
Well, that's good. I think what we need is more information. The more information that people have, the more they'll know what's going on and how to vote and how to change things, how to improve the system.
How do you feel about our taxes?
Well, I used to say I don't think taxes are too high. It's just that we don't spend them properly.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether they're too high or not. The problem is we spend them so improperly that it's really hard to tell.
Sure.
I'm not a libertarian to a great extent, at least economically, because the libertarians think that we should reduce the size of government regardless of the consequences. The problem is we need government to provide regulation. Some people don't like Ralph Nader, but for Ralph Nader, we would be without a lot of the consumer protection that we have in this country today.
Great advocate. Let me ask you this, because we don't have a whole lot of time left. But how are you on crime? and punishment. Let's talk about crime and punishment. You are a defense attorney,
right?
But try to be objective right now.
Well,
which you always are. I feel you are always objective. Hey, you came on my show.
I think that we need to incarcerate people who are dangerous. And people who are not dangerous, we can deal with them in alternative ways. It's much too expensive to incarcerate people who don't need it.
What about the alcoholics, the drug abusers, not the dealers or the people killing people in their vehicles, but I'm talking about the abusers, the
we
addicts.
need to change the drug laws in this country. Absolutely. We need to decriminalize, even legalize marijuana. That should happen.
I'm all for legalizing marijuana because let the government tax the marijuana and control it. Think of all the money the government would have. But here's something to think about. If we did legalize marijuana, would that put a dent in our justice system? Because think of all the courts and the law enforcement agencies and the counseling centers and the hospitals that depend upon the drug trade, depend upon people paying for therapy. You know, law enforcement officials who make their living by stopping this drug trade. I mean, it's just something to think about. I'm not saying I buy that, but it's something to think about.
Well, if we want to generate work in the economy, we can do that in a much more positive way.
Absolutely.
Other than incarcerating or punishing otherwise innocent citizens who happen to smoke some marijuana. President Clinton has admitted to doing that, and it's
There's
just
a lot
crazy.
more people out there who have gotten high that are willing to admit it.
Well, I'm willing to admit it.
Are you?
Oh, sure.
I've done it a few times.
Now,
I'm high on life.
It's interesting. I just read an article on the internet recently that described how Andrew Mellon, Andrew Carnegie, and William Randolph Hearst conspired together to make marijuana illegal because Hearst owned the timber farms and he didn't want hemp instead of paper, and the others were involved in the oil business, and they didn't want hemp to be used as an alternative to petrochemicals.
I never thought of it that way.
And
well, here's a question to you.
It just goes on and on.
Is it not true, and I took some flack on my radio show about this, which, by the way, airs every Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on 97.1 FM. Isn't it true that Native Americans or Indians throughout the world were smoking something for thousands of years in their pipes? And it's just until the white man came to this country and said it's illegal.
Well, it wasn't
I took some
until...
flack for saying on my radio show by my co-host Todd Stern, but I mean, isn't that a true comment?
Basically, I think that's true. It wasn't until the 1930s when big business got their economic mitts on the evil weed, and they concocted the stories about reefer madness.
Right.
There's no documentation of anyone ever committing a violent crime because of marijuana.
Now, there's a lot of harmful drugs out there. I mean, I'm not for the legalization of cocaine, heroin, LSD, speed, mushrooms, any of that stuff. We're just talking about marijuana.
Right.
And this isn't even a show on marijuana, so let me deviate real quick back to you.
Sure.
and ask you. I personally would like to see you, as my friend, run for some future political office, let's say the United States Senate down the road.
That would be my dream job.
Okay.
I would love to be in the United States Senate.
Who does the Reform Party have right now? I'm sorry, excuse me. Who does the Reform Party have right now that may be running for the U.S. Senate on the horizon?
Well, there's a man in Michigan, Dr. John Tanton. He lives in Petoskey, and he's an ophthalmologist. He's very pro-environment, and he has some strong opinions about immigration. You could probably call him anti-immigration, although I'm not sure that's an accurate label.
What's Abraham's stance on immigration?
Well, Abraham is, he's on the immigration committee or subcommittee, and...
what about Levin?
I'm not sure. You know, I'm a little bit disappointed in Carl Levin that he has been so silent over the last 5 or 10 years.
I think it's
he
time,
was such an activist.
I think it's time for him to go.
Went there, and well, it's either time to go or time to speak out.
I'm going to run someday for the U.S. Senate.
Well, I think we need some fresh blood.
But I want
in the
you to run
Congress.
for the U.S. Senate first.
Well, I want to win. I've
win.
run for office several times. I love running for office. I'm interested in politics, but I really want to make policy. I ran for the court because I wanted to point out a problem and make some change. I really don't want to be a judge or a justice of the Michigan Supreme Court. I want to be in a legislative position where I can change some of the bad laws that we have.
What would be some of your pet issues that you would probably, you know, grasp and run with if elected to the United States Senate someday?
Well, I think we ought to remove corporate tax breaks. I think we ought to strengthen the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. talk to people who live on the lakes in Michigan, the pollution is just outrageous, and we need to improve our infrastructure and our sewer systems. So
gambling.
We don't have overflow. Well, if I'm winning, I'm all for it.
Okay.
I think gambling is, you know, it's not a positive thing, but it's one of those things that people are going to do anyway. And so we might as well regulate it. And
gambling can be seen as an individual crime. I mean, you're not hurting somebody else, you're only hurting yourself.
a victimless crime.
It's a victimless crime. That's the word I was
Right.
looking for.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There are lots of victimless crimes, and we ought to decide whether we want to victimize people who are otherwise, who have not victimized others, or do we want to leave them alone? And that's where I do agree with the libertarians, that we need to liberalize.
How about gun control?
Well, gun control is,
Can I ask you that?
well, yeah, oh, absolutely.
Because if you're going to run for United States Senate someday, I think the public wants to know how you feel on that.
What we need to do with gun control is enforce the laws that are on the books. If
Let me just
somebody
jump
makes an
in here.
illegal sale, you know, they say all of these, so many people get denied permits
I think
because they're
people
not
kill
eligible.
people. I don't think guns kill people. I mean, I'm a very conservative on this issue.
Well,
I don't want to argue with you, but I feel that people kill people, guns do not kill people. I am for our constitutional right to bear arms.
I am too. I
Okay.
think, however, the easy availability of guns makes the risk a lot higher. On the
Absolutely.
other hand, while I don't own any weapons, I'm seriously considering it. And
Because if you take the guns away from people like you and I and the hunters and Ted Nugent and everybody else, the only people that are going to own guns are the criminals, and who's going to protect us? Besides
Right.
law enforcement, which they do a good job of, but that's just my view.
right, there were so many people who were turned down because of the Brady law with background checks
Right,
that they
right.
were found to be felons. Well, those felons were committing a felony by applying to get a gun
Isn't
in
that
the
amazing?
first place. So why don't we prosecute those people and put an end to it, make an example of that, and do something about it, and then people will be, their ability to obtain illegal weapons will be chilled, if you will.
Speaking about prosecutors, would you like to go on the record and talk about the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office? Has it changed much since Dick Thompson left?
Well,
I don't want to put you on the spot because I know we both have to appear in front of Oakland County prosecutors.
well, you know, there's no love lost between me
I
and
think they
most
do a fine
prosecutors.
job,
and-
okay? Can I just say that?
well, some of them do.
I love Dave Gorska.
Some do and
Right.
some don't. You know, same thing with police officers. I have some clients who are police officers.
Some of my
but,
best friends are police officers.
well, there's a lot
Chief
of
Dwyer's a friend of mine.
there's a lot of unethical police officers out there also.
A lot of unethical
And,
lawyers.
You know, well, true, but we're not there enforcing the law. That's the
true.
difference.
That is a good point.
And, you know, especially when let's say I have a low-level dope case in
Right.
somewhere, and a client comes up to me and he says, yes, I had the drugs in my pocket, but it didn't go down the way the officer said it went down. I was just standing there, and he came up and rousted me and went through my pockets.
Right.
That's an illegal search, whether the guy had anything on him or not. I believe the client. Now, that's a situation that you just have to take somebody's word for it. There's going to be live
what would
testimony.
what would you do, though, to maybe change the way law enforcement officials go about stopping individuals? Would you put cameras in cars?
I think absolutely. We need to have cameras in all patrol cars. And if they say there's no funding for that, well, what about all that drug forfeiture money that they don't know what
Where
to
does
do
that
with?
go?
It goes to the police departments. So they should use that money to put cameras in
Now,
cars
I am
so
for-
we can see the stops. And talking about
Okay.
cameras, there should be videotapes of all regular police interrogations, so we don't have to get into these disputes about what the officer said.
That's a good point. That's
There's
a good
no
point.
reason not to videotape this stuff.
Are you for a strong bond? Are you for supporting? I mean, I know you support law enforcement, but do you feel that their salaries are fair? Do you think they should be paid more for what they do? Do you know what the salaries are? I have a good idea because I've done some research into this.
Well, I think it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
Because they do have a tough job.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I know you're for law enforcement, right?
Well, to some extent, although I think a lot of citizens now have fear of the police because of their Gestapo tactics regarding the drug laws in this country. The drug laws in this country have turned otherwise honest citizens against the police and in fear of the police. And if we could remove these laws that I believe are really unconstitutional in the first place,
Sure.
the average citizen could be honest again and upfront.
I don't think the government is ever going to put the drug trade out of business. It's huge. I mean, you're not going to stop.
It's not going to go away.
It's not going to go away, and we're spending all this money fighting drugs, and
it's a failure. The war on drugs is an
complete failure. I agree completely.
And it's doing a lot of harm.
I mean, if this government...
Not only is it a waste of money, but it's doing a lot of harm.
I mean, Matt, if this government, we send people to the moon, we do amazing things. If we really wanted to stop the drug trade, we would go into those countries in South America and stop it. But, I mean, it's just quite possible, and this is just a theory, that the government's tied in. It can't stop it because there's too much politics and there's too much money involved.
And
what do you think about that?
And we want to sell weapons to all these countries.
Exactly.
So, I know you're very pro-defense. I heard you talking with Perry Spencer about that
I am
recently.
I am,
but
maybe that's, I'm very,
we need to have
very
a
pro-defense.
consistent foreign policy. I believe that we should be interventionist in places that, the United States has taken a leadership role in the world, and I think in our position as leaders, we need to speak out and to enforce, to try to correct wrongdoing. But we can't do it selectively where we have economic interests. We need to do it consistently across the board.
You know what really pees me off is when you got all these other countries out there that bash America, and then as soon as something happens to them, they cry for us to come and protect them. I mean, wasn't it France who didn't allow us to fly over their country years back? And if someone invaded France, who'd be the first one they'd call? They'd call you and I. And you know what? Screw them. That's what I say. Let the French fight themselves. Let them throw French fries at people or throw French onion soup at people. I don't want to get in my views. I'm here to ask you your views.
No, that's all right.
But I'm adamant about that. I feel, and we talked about this with Perry Spencer, who's the chair of the Reform Party. We talked about how Clinton has diminished the armed forces in this country and that we could not fight two fronts right now. That's a scary thought.
Well,
what's your thoughts on that?
I'm willing to debate the necessity of fighting two full-scale global wars. I don't.
What if we have China coming at us on one end and Mexico coming at us at the other? I'm just joking. They're our friendly neighbors. We like them both.
Why are we allowing our weaponry to be sold through third parties to our enemies? We're arming our enemies, and that's because the big defense contractors are making campaign contributions.
That's right.
And they need to sell these products in order to stay in business. This is the military-industrial complex that Republican President Dwight Eisenhower warned us about.
I like Ike.
Hey,
I just like saying that. I like Ike. I mean, can you just say that for me?
Oh, I like Ike, too.
Really? Okay, yes. Thank you. In fact, I saw a picture of his son on TV. He looks just like him. Hey, do you think our young, not to deviate here, but do you think our young cameraman, James over there, is going to wake up and let us know when the show's coming to an end? Because he looks real comfortable over there.
I think it's probably been so stimulating that he needs to rest his body so that his mind
All right, so let me just give you a
this.
platform right here. Let me know, why don't you just recap what your thoughts are on certain issues, and why don't you just go ahead.
Well, I think we need to seriously reduce the deficit and the national debt. We need to pay that off. The interest on that is just sucking a lot of the juice out of our economy. We need to clean up the campaign finance laws. We really need public financing for elections. We need to do some things to clean up the environment. If we can put a man on the moon, can't we build an automobile that doesn't pollute?
Can't we just all get along?
And besides, if we do build an automobile that doesn't pollute, think of all the technology that will spin off of that for other productive uses.
I wish we were still back in those days of the horse and carriage.
Well, I'm not sure.
I always wanted to ride a horse.
I'm not sure I want to do that, but I think the internet is really a great invention. We haven't talked about that, but
we've got 2 minutes left. Why don't you quickly mention that?
Well, all I really want to say about that is I think it's changing the face of American politics, and we have yet to see how much that's true, but it's really allowing a lot more people to be connected in a lot more ways than we previously had anticipated.
Are we going to see you run for office anytime soon?
I probably will again be a candidate for office.
Terrific.
I'm thinking about a new slogan, which should be raise Cain, vote Abel.
Matt, Matt, I just want to take the time to thank you so much for being here today, this evening, this morning, whatever time the viewers are watching this. You're a terrific person, you're a terrific lawyer, and I know someday if you run for office, you'd be a great candidate and you'd represent our interests to the best of your ability. So I want to thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next week on the Todd L. Levitt Show. And don't forget, every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on 97.1 FM, you can catch my talk show.